Okay, we are into our second video of the Q&A. And Deb says or asks, since many of us have to give our horses a long vacation this winter, should I expect a bit of freshness or respectful behavior from our horses when we do get to ride them again? Um, I would say a lot of what you can expect from your horse is very dependent on their personality and their training level. So if a horse is more green, then they are obviously going to take a little bit more time to get back into the swing of things after having a long break. If you have a more experienced horse that tends to have a more mellow personality, those horses tend to get back into the swing of things very quickly, whereas hotter horses will take a little bit longer. And again, depends on the horse a lot. A lot of this is knowing your own horse. Um, my Holsteiner I've had for 15 years, and he, at this point, if I have given him a longer break, is very easy to come back, even though he's a lot more sensitive because we have done a lot of work over the last 15 years and we know each other very well. That said, he's not a horse that I would just leave sitting in the field for a long time, snag him, take him off the property, and go for a ride. Whereas my Mustang, who is extremely mellow, he would do that no problem and just be probably grumpy with me that he is out of shape and I haven't worked with him recently. So a lot of it just kind of depends on your horse's personality, where their training level is. And I would say be fair. If you've been sitting a while, you're not going to want to jump right back into work either. So be fair with what you are asking your horse to do as well. Okay, and Patty asks, how do you correct a horse when they come in closer to you while lunging besides the cones? I had posted a video showing how I teach a green horse to lunge by setting up a series of cones. Um, I use 4 points on the circle and a cone for the exterior line and a cone for the interior line to kind of establish a nice circle and teach them actually how to move around me. Um, I do find that when I use the cones to start teaching a horse how to lunge, it helps them naturally move away from me. Or if you have a horse that tends to pull on you, it helps them guide not too far away from you. Um, if you have a horse that is pulling you, then they are probably not ready to be lunging yet. And there are other exercises that need to be done to teach them to kind of follow the lead and not pull you away from the circle. If you have a horse that's constantly diving in, then again, there are exercises that you need to be doing before lunging. And those are typically more along the line of sending exercises where you're asking them to move away from you. Typically, if you have a horse consistently diving in or pulling out while you are trying to lunge them, then they are not ready for that exercise yet. And there are other exercises that you need to go back and do. Now, that being said, there are a few horses that I have worked with that will do those exercises well, but they have learned that if they dive in or pull back, pull out to the outside, then they have kind of learned to use that as a way to get out of work. And um, it's gotten them out of work at some point. So again, I typically go back to doing a few other exercises first and getting them more responsive before I go to lunging. I never start with lunging. There are so many exercises that need to be done first. Okay, and Lori says, my new boy is interesting. He pins his ears in his stall as you walk towards him, and as soon as you touch him, ears forward again. His mom was similar. He loves to be groomed and will stand forever, grooming, combing his mane and tail. He's very sweet. I can't figure out the angry look he initially gives. Um, I would say first, if you mentioned he was passed around a lot, if the horse is not confident and comfortable in their surroundings, then they're going to be a little bit more defensive. And I've known a lot of horses who will give the look as a as a way to kind of express that they're uncomfortable with the situation. And some never follow through on it, and then some will. Um, I like to kind of do a little bit of work and see if I can't pause when they pin their ears and kind of give them that moment and give them a chance to settle, and then proceed with what I was doing once they kind of settle. A lot of times I see horses that were just kind of rushed into doing things, and all their boundaries are kind of blown through, and they kind of have this reaction. And so I will try to approach it that way and give them a chance to um, relax around me and kind of settle. And at a certain point, once I've tried those exercises where I'm just kind of giving a minute to, hi Leo, to relax and settle, if I've done that some with them, then I don't let it stop what I'm asking them to do, um, because that can encourage them to continue making those faces. I will give them that second and then continue with what I'm doing. And some horses, I just kind of ignore it after a certain point. If they're just making a dirty face, I just kind of ignore it and go about my business. Most horses will do something else with the face, whether they kind of block a certain part of their body or things like that. And that is definitely where I will pause and kind of wait for them to settle and then continue with what I'm doing. Okay, and Sam asks for massaging tips to release tension. Her horse is older and has a lot of tension. Also, the best hoof products because her horse has thrush and dry and cracked feet at the same time. So, for the feet, I would say dry and cracked feet. Um, I like to look at hoof care. Do you have a farrier that's addressing the situation well and giving you tips on what you can be doing? Nutrition. Um, Usually, dry, cracked feet, there is something they are lacking nutritionally. Thrush, that is going to be significantly helped by a farrier who is trimming correctly, as well as your horse not standing in muck. If a horse comes in, which I actually have quite a number of horses that come in with sulcus thrush, I like to clean it out really good. It can be extremely sensitive. So being careful, gauze, using a little bit of gauze and kind of flossing the sulcus can help clean it out really well. And then using a little bit of the Tomorrow Dry Cow there in the sulcus or anywhere else there's thrush, um, always does a great job cleaning it out, cleaning up with the thrush that I have. So that is my go-to, but making sure they're not standing in muck as much as possible, and having a really good farrier that helps address the situation, good diet, um, and that's how I deal with feet issues. For massaging tips to release tension, I highly recommend learning in hand movement based things. It's just like us if we are sitting around not moving our bodies, especially with the older we get, the more damage we've done to our bodies, then we're going to get stiff. There is absolutely 100% a right way to do this and a way that will damage your horse. I am really careful about, there are a lot of static stretches that are out there that I have seen hurt horses, because they were asked to stretch too far in an incorrect manner, and it actually um, created a lot of problems for the horse. So this is something I would say I am not going to be able to answer appropriately in a video like this. It is something I would highly recommend taking some lessons, and learning how to do it. There's courses out there. I teach people basic things that they can do with their horses to help them out, but it's not something that would be appropriate to teach here because there's a lot of ways to easily hurt the horse more. Okay, and Lori asks, Mopa's at feed time, and when he's anxious or bored, how can I help him? So there are some in-hand exercises that you can work on that can help teach a horse to focus and relax. Ground tying is a big one that's extremely helpful for horses like this. Um, if it is at feed time, then a lot of that is going to be associated with the um, anticipation of feed. That one's a lot harder to break. Um, Not impossible, but I would say that that should not be your focus to start with, but more begin with when you're working in hand or working with your horse in general and helping him to stand ground tied. Um, and it's a matter of being able to focus and relax, which can be very difficult for some horses, including Mo. Um, so I would say start with ground tying exercises and then translate the exact same concept to being tied, but treat it as ground tying and then go from there. Some horses benefit from hobble training for this. Hobble training is extremely easy to severely injure your horse and must be done very carefully. And there is a certain process that I go through when I start hobble training a horse, teaching them how to follow the feel of a rope on their foot, roping their feet individually and following that feel of the foot where they're not panicking and yanking. And it teaches them to relax to that pressure. It is absolutely not something you can just throw a pair of hobbles on. You will break your horse more often than not. But hobble training can be very beneficial for this as well. And the last question we're going to answer today, Patty asks, how long to wait before riding your finished new horse once you get it home? So I typically don't like riding um, horses the same day I move them to a new location. Um, Certainly not turning the horse out and then pulling it back in. If you're going to ride it when you first get it home, ride it as soon as you get it off the trailer and then settle it in. And then it depends on the horse and their personality. Some horses settle very quickly and are a lot more confident, and those horses, I'll start them into a routine immediately. If the horse is more anxious, I will still start them into a routine immediately, but might make the routine pulling them out, grooming them, doing some groundwork, putting them back. But I immediately start my routine with any horse. It's just depending on how confident they are and how quickly they adjust to a new setting. Do I um, push them to ride, or do I stick with establishing a routine and helping them relax, doing some groundwork and things like that and building on it? Or do I immediately start asking for a little bit more from them? Okay, so there were a few other questions that I'll be getting to in another video. As always, feel free to ask follow-up questions to any of these answers or new questions, and I will add them to my list to get back to.